Hello, you are listening to the DMZ America Podcast for Friday, February 23rd, 2024. Coming to you from the left, I am political cartoonist Ted Rall.
And I'm political cartoonist Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right, and coming to you from doom doom doo doo doom doom doo doo doom 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 boom doo doo doo. Turn it up.
Boy, you got a pretty mouth.
I'm coming to you from Alabama, which is okay. Obviously, not breaking news, but news this week, and ridiculous news, preposterous news.
On multiple fronts, on the life and death fronts.
Yes, we are so pro-life that embryos now are considered children, and we're so pro-life that we're going to literally suffocate a human being to death for a crime
because it worked out so well the last time.
Well, he only had convulsions for about 10 minutes.
Right. By some reports, 22. Depends on who you count. Apparently, he was gasping for breath. For people who missed this, the state of Alabama, for the first time in the United States, anywhere, executed someone using a novel form of execution called nitrogen asphyxiation. And what that is a fancy word it's a fancy way of saying you suffocate a human being to death. You put nitrogen gas, you put a mask over their face, you put nitrogen gas in there. And basically, nitrogen gas is air minus oxygen. So you need oxygen more than you need nitrogen. Well, you need the mix. And so without it, you immediately go into distress. This was warned by many scientists. It's not done even by veterinarians. It's considered unethical to use to euthanize animals. But anyway, they did that. By all accounts, the victims struggled prodigiously, depending on whether you're talking about a few minutes, because apparently there's not a clock in the death chamber. So people have to kind of estimate how long it took.
Oh God, if only there was some kind of device that we could wear on our persons that would actually tell the time.
Apparently you're not allowed to bring those in, is what I read.
Oh, so I bet because they can take photographs.
Oh, that's probably true. Yep. So anyway, they don't. So the point is that the reports ranged from 4 to 22. I would say the most credible was like around 10 minutes, like you said. It probably seemed like longer, I would imagine. It was apparently a horrifying experience. So the state of Alabama has decided they're going to do this again. And my home state of Ohio is apparently thinks that this was a very successful experiment and they want to do it too. So that we're off to the races with that. And then the Alabama State Supreme Court has ruled in a really interesting case that really ought to be kind of a tort, I think. But what happened was that sort of through oafish clumsiness, lab workers accidentally dropped frozen embryos that belonged to a couple. The couple filed suit against the lab, and the state of Alabama Supreme Court ruled that this was a violation of Alabama's law that considers all unborn children, aka fetuses, to be fully protected human beings like adults under the law, and therefore that the lab is guilty not only of negligence but conceivably of murder or manslaughter, I guess in this case, maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Let me, and I really do. I live here in Birmingham, Alabama, and have worked at the Birmingham News for 13 years before I moved on to the Chicago Tribune. And now we've moved back to Alabama. So yes, I know most of the players. And Tom Parker, who is the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, cited the Bible, and I'm not kidding, as part of the rationale for this legal decision. I mean, that's really unheard of. The law that Ted...
Well, it's totally heard of in theocracies.
Well, yeah, if it's Sharia, we'd probably be quoting the Quran, but we're for the moment, we are not. So Tom Parker is the Chief Justice. Tom Parker is, Ted, what's the technical term? Damn it. It's a legal term.
Starts with a T.
No, it starts with an I. Idiot. Yeah, that was it. Idiot.
Well, there's a synonym that starts with a T.
Yeah, we're not going to.
We won't
watch
do that.
Our language here on the fucking DMZ America podcast.
That's right.
Anyway, so Tom Parker he was associate justice. He was a dipshit then. He's a dipshit now. And he's the one who cited the Bible as part of his legal rationale. The law is not a new law. The law is from the 1870s, and ostensibly it was created because some jackass beat his then pregnant wife to death. And so they wanted to pile on. And if you do this, then you're going to be charged not with the death, just the death of the mother, but also the death of the unborn child.
And in fairness, this is not a unique to Alabama type scenario. There are
No, but the rationale and the logic behind supporting it and saying that embryos in a dish are human beings, that is peculiarly Alabama. There is just an update, Ted. They just introduced a bill today to get rid of that part of the law and to say that, fetuses in dishes are not human beings.
In other words, to make an exception for people who are seeking in vitro fertilization. I mean,
right.
it's a
all
very,
of those clinics are on hold today. Everyone in Alabama.
It's a
for obvious
major
reasons.
It's big business for one thing. It's very lucrative. A lot of hospitals make a lot of money doing this. So I would.
There is a cartoonist we both know, a conservative cartoonist who let's just call him Mike Ramirez because that's his name. His family's involved in that business, by the way. Just so
really?
And it is extremely lucrative.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not. I think these days it's like $50,000 for per round, and there are people who do it multiple times. Brooke Shields famously did it half a dozen times. So I mean, we're talking about big bucks. It's not generally covered by insurance. You pay out of pocket. So, the hospitals love that. They just get that sweet, sweet cash. But also, I mean, it reflects some major changes in our society, which is people are having children later and later. And, I don't know if it's a chicken or egg thing. Part of the reason, certainly IVF makes that feasible, where it used to be, look, there's a huge quantum drop off in fertility that occurs at various steps. On average, women experience a substantial drop off at the age of 21, then at 28, then at 34, and then it falls off a cliff after 41. And everybody knows someone who got pregnant when they were 48. But the fact is, it's like basically impossible. The reality is, if you want to get pregnant, if you're in your late 30s, you may find yourself at an IVF clinic. And there's surgery involved. Often women have endometriosis that has to be scraped away. The eggs have to be harvested. That is a surgical procedure. The woman who's going to carry the child has to have the fertilized blastocyst implanted, or multiple ones implanted, depending on the calculus of the fertility doctor. But usually they do two in most cases, and then they hope that one makes it. And then you end up with a lot of excess, typically some extra fertilized embryos. And then it's like the idea is, well, we can go back and do this later. We can try again. If this one doesn't take, we have like 4 or 5. And then you pay a fee to a lab, typically $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a year to keep them on ice, basically. And now the funny part is about this Alabama ruling is followed to its logical conclusion. If you paid to have your fertilized embryo kept at UAB lab, and let's say you died, and then you stopped paying your bill because your dead people are horrible deadbeats, then they, under the law, it seems to me like under this ruling, that UAB would be legally required to keep your embryo on ice forever, literally forever. Otherwise, they would be. So literally, the embryo can live thousands of years, but you, on the other hand, don't have that privilege.
Right. And it also, it begs so many other questions, like, at 16, when they turn 18, are they adults?
Good question. That's like we're coming up on Leap Day next week. And there's that whole thing, like, if you were born on Leap Day, are you really 1/4 of your age?
Well, and so for the embryos, can they vote when they turn 18 years old? Can they, like I said, can they be draft? Do they have to register for the draft when they turn 18? Can they drink when they're 21? it just gets more and more ridiculous. And people would say, Scott, that's absurd. That's just, now you're just being silly. I go, no, I mean, these are legitimate questions.
Well, we're
If you're
already
going to
in the
view them.
silly zone. I mean, here's the
Yes.
thing. I do believe, but Scott, you are pro-life, right? You are anti-abortion. You do believe in, correct me if I'm mischaracterizing your position, but you are consistently pro-life, which is to say anti-capital punishment
Yes.
and
Euthanasia.
anti-abortion. So but as a libertarian, you don't believe that the government should be making that decision for women. So basically, you would rather women choose not to do it, basically.
Of course. Well, and I don't like criminalizing anything, only because, well, the state's so bad at prosecuting people. So yes, that would be, and that, that dovetails into the fact that Alabama now has, is suffocating. Why do the gas? Why not just have some big guy with a pillow?
Yeah, no, seriously, garroting would be faster. Just to use a wire, like the mob does.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I suspect that part of the death penalty
Or
psychology is to make it as well. Firing squad is second fastest, second only to Vive la France.
Like guillotine.
Oui.
No, the guillotine is, first of all, foolproof. I've never heard of anyone surviving it.
I know, you don't hear.
And it just, like the blade was a little rusty. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, or the head's still talking. Wait a minute.
Well, that does happen.
They say that, but the science, I've read articles on this because it really isn't interesting. Is there still a level of consciousness? And there's not. The shock that goes through is the brain would be unfunctioning.
Well, there was a guy who was guillotined during the reign of terror during the French Revolution, where he made arrangements with a physician, and the physician said, "Please signal me, like by blinking your eyes a certain number of times, if you still feel anything." And he did.
Okay, but all right. But the scientists today believe that was just a reflex, that the brain cannot function for more than a few seconds once it's removed from the rest of the body.
Right. No, I'm sure it's not for very long. But
anyway, so yeah, we should have the guilty. The death penalty. I mean, here's the thing: if you're a conservative, I never understood this, Ted. If you're a conservative, how is it okay for you to say the state retains the right of life and death over you?
The state that is often wrong about that determination, right?
Well, let's just forget about right or wrong convictions, which you and I both know has happened. This is just handing the state the right to kill one of the citizens. It makes me extremely uncomfortable on so many levels. First of all, morally, I think the death penalty is abhorrent. And I believe that a Christian state like Alabama, if you brought Jesus back, I don't think he enjoyed being the victim of capital punishment. I have to believe that he would come back and say, you know what, guys, it sucks. It hurts. It did not serve as a deterrent because apparently there's at least.
Because he came back 3 days later anyway.
Yeah, to say, yeah. I don't think he said that. I just made that part up. Anyway,
and he was just as sassy when he came back.
Yeah,
didn't change his beliefs. Wasn't like, yo, I'm on Team Augustus now, bitches.
Yeah, it's a lousy deterrent. So it's like, actually, capital punishment is a lousy.
It's deterrent. A completely non-existent. Yeah, no, I mean, you can tell that really quite simply by the fact that the states with capital punishments are the ones with the highest crime rate, right?
Yeah,
and the highest murder rate.
Yes, we do. In fact, Birmingham, Alabama is one of the highest homicide rates in the country. Booyah. Yeah.
I guess they would argue that it would be even worse without capital punishment, maybe.
That's of course the murder rate, the homicide rate in the United States, when the Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty was cruel and unusual punishment. So we went a little over a decade where they could not have capital punishment, and the murder rate, it made no appreciable difference. None. Zero.
Made no difference. Yeah, no, I mean, here's the thing, Scott. I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, I guess, first of all, there's just the practical issue. I mean, I think life begins at conception. That's science. As soon as you have cellular division, I mean, don't tell me that, like, if you have a if you're a woman and you have a fetus that is 8.5 months old, that's not a baby in there. It is. And it's viable. And if it was taken out, it almost certainly will make it. So the question is, we don't really know where to draw the line. When the Supreme Court did Roe v. Wade in 1973, they sort of settled on viability as sort of what they called the quickening back in the old days, as sort of the place to land on this as a political compromise. But that keeps changing because medical science keeps improving. There have been premature children born as young as 3 months. No problem. Well, I shouldn't say no problem, but
big problem, but
big problems, but they're alive and functioning today. So that's not a very useful metric, I think. And I think I keep coming back to, like, quite frankly, it's like the law hasn't caught up with the science, and we do have to fundamentally admit that it is killing people, but maybe that has to be okay, because otherwise women just can't control their destinies, and we can't have that.
Well, here's another part, and you're right, there are a lot of pieces to unpack here. The anti-abortion legislation that all the, especially red states, rushed to pass shortly after Roe v. Wade was shot down, is that the laws are so badly written that they're almost incomprehensible. They're written by, again, idiots, and not physicians, not professionals.
They didn't consult with physicians, or
they may have asked someone at a bar. I mean, that's what this legislation reads. It's so stupid and so far reaching that OBGYNs in Alabama are leaving in droves. And in fact, I know I've mentioned this to you before on this podcast, but it bears repeating. Shelby County, which is a county I live in, which is just south of Jefferson County, which has Birmingham in it. But Shelby County is growing pretty quickly. But they just shut down Baptist Hospital. Shelby County just shut down its birthing center, which was the last birthing center in the county of Shelby. There are numerous counties in the state now that have shut down their birthing centers. And these aren't centers, they may or may not have been performing abortions, but these are just generally places where, you go and you have your baby, and there are nurses and doctors who are proficient at that, at that particular event. So this is the price we're paying for just having ludicrous laws that are rushed through the legislature that no one bothered to read, quote from Nancy Pelosi, I'll know what's in it when it passes. That's another element of this story that, Alabama does not allow abortions. They're having, they want to move the weeks up where you can't have any kind of procedure whatsoever. But you and I both know, and this is coming from my heart, that there are women who get in a medical position where the pregnancy is not viable, but forcing that woman to carry that effectively dead fetus to term is inhumane and unnecessary. Now legislatures are moving very quickly to try to ban the morning after pill, which even the Catholic Church is kind of okay with. And this movement, as Ted has brought up in other podcasts, IUDs and birth control pills and condoms. I mean, all of that stuff now is on the table for these ultra conservative, Taliban-like Christians who want to control your body, your decisions. I don't have a problem with birth control. I think that again, that's a personal decision. Technology, we didn't have that technology back in the 1870s. When the law that they're basing this preposterous embryo law here in Alabama on. My point to tie things up is I strongly oppose any government entity telling me what I can and cannot do. By turns, I think there is room for some kind of regulation in this stuff, but because I'm not a batshit crazy libertarian. But what happened here in Alabama is not, Ted, that there are other states that are going to look at this and go, damn, that's a great idea. Let's do that.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
For no other reason. There's no reason for it. There is you mentioned the case, and you're absolutely right. It was a couple and some dipshit working at a lab dropped their embryos.
Because it's Alabama.
Whoops. He slipped on a goober. Anyway, yeah. So there's some things about Alabama is one of those weird states that it's really, when you drive through it, it's gorgeous. The people are incredibly friendly, hardworking, industrious. Our unemployment rate is one of the lowest in the country. Um, but because we continue to do stuff like this, I mean, doesn't this resonate with you, Ted, a little bit of the fire hoses and the Jim Crow and the
Well,
of
I
the
mean, Alabama
1950s?
has a bad reputation. I mean,
It deserves it.
it does. I mean, people like literally when they hear the story, they just roll their eyes and they say, oh, Alabama, in the same way that people maybe in Alabama, when they hear about something like crazy woke happening in California, roll their eyes like,
Yes. Yeah.
oh, what do you expect? Or, people hear about something, some overreach in Massachusetts or whatever. So, I mean, yeah, that's the reputation they've got. This isn't helping. It certainly doesn't make you think that they're. I mean, it's kind of like I think the view here is kind of like if people in Alabama want to be pro-life and have laws that are against abortion, maybe that's okay. But this kind of thing seems really extreme. I mean, after all, we're not talking about abortion here. We're talking about IVF is a process in which people desperately want to have children, are willing to pay a lot of money and endure a lot of discomfort and trauma and even risk cancer to have children. So this is IVF is a very pro-life thing, right? It's very pro-life. It's like to an extreme.
That's fair.
I mean, that's why it's kind of interesting what's happening in Texas, where there's these lawsuits, right? Where they have these draconian laws where you can't, like you basically anyone who tries to terminate a pregnancy, even if the mother's about to die, can't get medical care. And most of the women who are suing are people who wanted desperately to have children. Some of them actually got pregnant through IVF. They paid for it, but then they learned that, there was either an ectopic pregnancy or some other threat to their lives. And unfortunately, tragically, sadly, horribly, determined that their doctor said, the kid's going to die anyway, and we've got to take it out. Otherwise you're going to die too. And they can't get medical care. And some of these women have actually come close to death. I mean, that's not pro-life, right? That's like insane.
How you can't say you're pro-life if one of the aspects of your criminal justice system is tying someone to a gurney and suffocating them. You lose the right to call yourself pro-life. You,
by the way, I love how they say
not.
I love how the district attorney for the attorney general for the state of Alabama said, we have now done it and we know that it works. I would submit to you, Scott, that if, let's just say, everything had appeared to go really smoothly, one time is not a scientific study. And
no,
they did do it one time and it didn't go smoothly.
It didn't go smoothly, but it worked. It's funny.
It worked. I mean, but like you said, you could pound someone to death with a rock. I mean, it's a success. I mean, the Taliban do it. It works. Yeah.
Yeah, it does work. You could have a firing squad. It was weird. Do you remember Gary Gilmore? He was the first execution after the Supreme Court reversed itself.
1977.
And do you remember his last words?
Just do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. It supposedly inspired the Nike logo.
Oh God, you think so?
That's lore. I don't know if that's true.
And so for the firing squad, real interesting side note, this is in Utah, and you have volunteers. Can you fucking imagine people would volunteer? I get to shoot a person.
Yeah, why do you think someone would volunteer?
Because there's a lot of freaks out there.
They don't get paid?
They get paid like $50.
Oh, so it's not like $10,000.
No. And there's 5, if I'm remembering correctly, there was 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, whatever the number was. And one of them is given a blank.
But when you're familiar with guns, when you're firing a blank.
When you load it, you don't know when it fires because it has the same amount of gunpowder. So it still has the same amount of kick and smell and smoke. But the presumption is that the person, you don't know who had the blank. So you can kid yourself. And say,
maybe I didn't really, except for the fact that, of course, you showed up and you were willing to shoot
Yes.
that person.
How weird
So-
is that, man? I mean, do you know any, okay, here's a question for our listeners, both of you. Do you know, is there anyone in your life that you know who would volunteer to do that?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I think there is. I think I
Yes.
know one or two people who would
Yes.
volunteer for that.
I think so. I think I know a few people who would do that too. Yeah.
Not me,
We're not,
right?
we're not, you're not one of them.
Okay.
And
thank you.
I'm not one of them either.
You are definitely not one
You
of them.
couldn't
No.
pay me enough. I mean, I don't care if you paid me $1 billion. I'd be like, fuck off. No.
No, I don't want to kill somebody. Why would I want to do that?
I mean, no, I mean, I'm against it. Look, my reason for being against the death penalty is twofold. First of all, if anyone has ever innocent has ever been executed, by definition, the whole thing is morally bankrupt, and they have. We know that. But also, the state should set the highest standard for behavior, not the lowest. And that's why they should be treating all citizens humanely, with dignity, and they shouldn't be murdering people. Murder is literally the worst thing you can do to another human being. The state shouldn't be doing that. The state shouldn't become the worst people in the world. And that's what they become when they murder people. It's not even like under Sharia, which you mentioned. They have a better system. At least it's based purely on vengeance. And the survivors of the murder victim or rape victim, in the case of Sharia law, are allowed to, they're asked before the sentence is carried out, are you sure you want us to go ahead? And they can say yes, no, in which case the person is released, or they can say, well, I would rather something in between, like they can go to prison for some time or something. And so at least, it's the state serving the interests and the opinions of the relatives. In this country, the relatives of the condemned, of the victim, are often completely against the death penalty, and it's carried out over against their will.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but there's also, I mean, you just mentioned, I did not know this was Sharia law. Apparently, I believe in Sharia law because one of the alternatives to the death penalty would be
Hold on a second, Scott. Anyway, go ahead. It was just Jesus coming to visit.
Hope you gave him a good tip.
I always.
No, I don't disagree with that part of Sharia law. I've proposed half facetiously, but half not, that instead of the death penalty, have 5 minutes alone in a room, and that is close relatives of the victim. The perpetrator, the convicted killer, is tied to a chair. He or she cannot move, and you can do anything you want. You can bring in power tools, jackhammers, anything you want, or you can forgive them. I mean, there's any number of things you can do, and I kind of like that idea, though I don't like the idea.
I don't know if I'm agree with the whole power tools. That seems a little, 1970s.
If someone did something to your son, you don't think you'd want to do that?
Yes, but I would want to do all sorts of things, and there are people I would do that to right now. But part of the reason that we have society is to try to prevent people from doing some of the things that they want to do.
Fair enough.
All right, so let's leave that there. And when we come back, we will resume the DMZ America podcast. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the DMZ America podcast for Friday, February 23rd, 2024. I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
And I'm Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the right. And tomorrow, Saturday, will be the Republican primary in South Carolina. The Democrats had theirs a couple of weeks ago, where Joe Biden won by 96%. He won 96% of the vote.
In the role of Saddam Hussein.
As he likes to say, what? Pudding? The Kaiser! So Saturday, Ted and I are going to handicap what's obviously going to happen and what to look forward going forward. Mind if I take the lead on this and just say
Please.
That, every single poll coming out of South Carolina is that Donald Trump is going to win by a substantial amount. That you would think that would be the
65 to 35.
Yeah, it could be a little closer. Bear in mind that Nikki Haley, two-term governor of South Carolina, born and raised there. To most campaigns, this would be devastating, but she has already said that she ain't going anywhere.
Yep.
And I wonder, first and foremost, Ted, my question is, what is her game plan? Because I know on your radio program on Sputnik, the final countdown with Angie, um, Wong? Oh my gosh.
Wong.
Oh, I got something right. Woohoo!
Two Wongs make a right.
Oh, that's very funny.
Thank you.
But she has connections in the Nikki Haley campaign. She certainly speaks that way. I'm curious to know, what is Nikki Haley's
She has
end game
connections all over Republican
land?
land. Yeah, world.
Yeah, but she seemed, last time I was on, she seemed to have really deep connections in the Haley campaign.
Yeah, she's never told
Regardless,
me that, but I would not be surprised if that was the case.
so what is Nikki Haley's? I mean, you get, okay, I live and work here in Alabama. I'm not a native, obviously, you can tell from the accent. But let's assume for a moment I was a two-term governor here. I
Mhm.
decide I want to run for president, and I come back to Alabama, and Alabama gives me 35% of the vote. And the
Yeah,
rest to the guy who's against Ted Rall, I'm running against in the primary, which would be a
yeah,
hilarious primary. Um,
it
what,
would be.
why is she not going to quit, or is she just blowing smoke?
Well, I mean, convention, I've heard a lot of different explanations. Today, Angie said that she thought that she's trying to set herself up for a vice presidential run in the future and basically maybe end up running for Senate in South Carolina, because that's the road to the vice presidency, is through the Senate these days.
I'm going to
And
stop you right there and just say that um, the Republican Party will never nominate someone who jumped in Trump's face like she
okay,
has.
so then
Won't
that
do
would
it.
be that, but who knows? What I
South
heard,
Carolina won't elect her because she was so mean to Donald Trump, which she's not
true.
mean at all. Her criticism is pretty soft, but
Well, no, I mean, she's running against him. She's allowed to criticize him, or apparently not. But like I mean, my take is that she's basically the Republicans' version of Gavin Newsom. She's a vulture. She's waiting for Trump to fuck up, to die, to get arrested, to somehow, whatever, get caught, raping cats or something. And then the point is that at that point, she steps up and she's like, I'm the last woman standing. Here I am. Everyone else dropped out. Sorry, Ron DeSantis. I'm still here. I think she views it as a war of attrition, where she's basically Ukraine. Like if she hangs on, she's still, as long as she hangs on, she's like not dead yet. And then if something happens to Russia or Trump, then she wins. I mean, it's a strategy. It's certainly true that never in the history of modern politics has a politician had as much heat on him as Donald Trump currently does, right? I mean, no question. I mean, this would make Richard Nixon was positively chill and relaxed during Watergate, had far fewer things to worry about than Donald Trump does. So I think I think that's probably all that's happening. She's playing for time, and I don't think there's much more to it than that. I wonder if she outperforms, if she exceeds expectations. Look, she can't win. She will not win. The margin's too big. You're not going to overcome a 65-35 lead in a day or two. But what if she pulled kind of an upset, like she got 45, 55, 45? That would shock MAGA world, and it might encourage pro-Haley forces going into Super Tuesday. But the Republicans are your party, Scott. I mean, what do you think? Is it just Trump, 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 Trump,
yeah,
Trump,
yes,
Trump,
yes,
Trump,
yes,
and they just don't care?
No, they don't. And I'm curious how she is performing so badly in her state. I'm wondering if, I mean, I don't know if she still lives there. I suspect she does. I have no earthly idea what her roots are. She, like I said, she was born and raised there. So it's not like she
I think she
moved
still
there.
lives there.
And if that's the case, then all the constitutional officers, Republican, I think they're all Republican there, endorsed Donald Trump. Not one of them endorsed Nikki Haley. That speaks to me that what the hell's wrong with her?
Well, maybe nothing, but I mean, I'll tell you one thing. What's wrong with her is that she's a her, also, and not a him. Also, she's technically a woman of color, although you wouldn't know it. from her name or the way she talks or anything that she does. I mean, she's done everything possible to run away from her South Asian heritage. And then also, I think if we get down the list to policy, I'm not sure Republican voters do these days, but if they
They
do,
don't.
they're going to find some neocon warmongering that the Republican populists do not approve of.
Mm. Yeah, there is this movement, and maybe we can dovetail a little bit into that. Into like they're becoming more and more, and Donald Trump certainly is. A 1930s. We joked about it when I was on your show recently. I consider myself a 1930s isolationist. I really believe that we should just get our nose out of everybody else's
So do I.
business.
You know, Scott, I was working on an essay a few weeks ago, and I was kind of wondering. So the U.S. spends almost $900 billion a year on the
Jesus.
Defense Department. Total, when you include other wars and deficit spending, debt service on old wars, you get to a total of $1.6 trillion a year. Now, the thing is, guess how much Brazil spends on their military? And Brazil is a larger country than the United States. They also have security concerns. They have some neighbors who they have border disputes with. They have internal concerns. I mean, it is the most important country in Latin America by far. So it's not like they have nothing to do down there. But in terms of they certainly, you could say it's a good comparison to what the U.S. would need just to defend the homeland. Guess how much they spend? We spend 1.6 trillion a year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. What do you mean there's the same size?
Well, they're like geographically the same size
land
of
for the contiguous 48.
mass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, how much do they spend? I'm going to say 500 million.
20 billion.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So they spend 2.5% what we spent.
Well,
now,
we
obviously
are
that's because we're like all over the world and we're engaged in, we have military bases all over the place and we spend like shit, like crazy, and we give stuff to everyone else. And so there's all that, right? So we're an empire. We're not just defending the United. It should not be called the Department of Defense because they don't really defend the United States. I mean, as we saw on 9/11, they don't know how. So it's like, I mean, literally, on 9/11, there were only 12 Air Force National Guardsmen guarding the entire airspace of the United States of America at the time of the attacks of all of the contiguous 48 states. 12 weekend warriors, and not one of them happened to be up in the air when any of this happened. They were all like, grab coffee and then run for the plane. So literally there was no Air Force. I mean, it's not like that in other countries. They're like in other countries, like I guarantee you, like South Korea has planes in the air 24/7 flying around the perimeter of the country. It's just Iran has that, Russia has that, China has that. France has that. It's very weird that we don't do that, or maybe we do it now, but we didn't do it back then. Anyway, I think that I'm curious though about this, where, Trump won in large part because of his America First, quit fucking around with the rest of the world vibe in 2016. I wonder how he would handle the Israel-Hamas conflict if he were to become president again. I don't know. This is a rapidly moving story. I'm pretty sure that by the time Inauguration Day rolls around, the war in Gaza will be over. The population will have been completely expelled, and they'll be Egypt's problem. But the West Bank will be hot, and Israel will be bombing and invading the West Bank and trying to do the same thing there. How will he navigate that? Because he's so pro-Israel, but he's not into would he make an exception for that war, or would he just sort of try to figure a way to bring it in for a landing?
No, I think he would try to bring it in for a landing, clearly, but I don't know that he has the tools, and I don't know that Israel wants to be landed. So
no, they don't.
No, they're not done yet. They're almost done. They're getting close to being done.
Yeah.
I suspect that he would handle it the same way the Biden administration is, which is like, oh boy, yeah, I wish you weren't doing that, but
we are.
I guess you got it. You got to be you.
Yeah. But the problem is, I think that like he's getting pressure. Biden and the Democratic Party are getting pressure not from just the progressive left, but also from the right wing Rand Paul wing of the Republican Party. They don't like what they see, and they think that like if Israel's going to do what Israel's going to do, they can do it without U.S. money or weapons.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, we've had this discussion before. It's no way in God's green earth is that money going to stop. Period.
Well, we shall see. I think
Okay.
currently you're probably right, but I think never has the United States looked more diplomatically isolated or foolish. They are literally at the G20, the only pro-Israel country. At the UN, at the International Court of Justice, they looked positively foolish arguing in favor of Israel. Their arguments in favor of Israel were infantile, really poorly constructed, embarrassing. I mean, it was just like they have a right to defend themselves. It's like, yeah, but we're
Well,
past that.
the court certainly bought that argument. They didn't go full genocide on Israel.
Well, they don't have a mechanism to do that for several years, unfortunately. But they're still trying to figure out whether whether they're going to issue a preliminary kind of finding that Israel should tamp it down. I think they will. I mean, they'll have to.
I suspect they will too. So let's tie this up, and we're going to have one segment left.
Yes, we will. All right, here we go.
Okay.
And away we go.
Woo-hoo.
And finally, today, this is the third and final segment of the DMZ America podcast for Friday, February 23rd, 2024. Coming to you from the American left, such as it is. I'm Ted Rall.
Coming to you from the Lithuanian right, I'm Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist.
That's redundant. Lithuanians are inherently right-winger. Right wing.
No, they're not. They have like national health care there. That's a damn.
Oh, that's a good point. I just think of Lithuanian culture as being like.
Is it? How do you get that?
I don't know. Well, speaking of which, and this does dovetail into our final topic.
Okay.
I was wondering what you thought of this. There was the AP had a piece. I posted it on my socials today. It's about the marking the second anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 22nd, 2022, 2222, right? The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, was at a ceremony in a cemetery. In the background, there are tons and tons of flags. Half of them are Ukrainian, and the other half are fascist. They're the red and black. There's the red and black collaborationist World War II fascist flag in favor of neo-Nazism, and then there's the Iron Cross flags, also from the same period of the Stefan Bandera.
I'll have to see that. I didn't see that.
Yeah, you could just see it. It's literally the AP story for today about Ukraine. And I thought it was hilarious that like they're not even trying to. I mean, I guess they figure Americans just see flags. They don't really know anything.
No, well, no, of course not. Most people don't. I mean, I'm a flag, geek, so I know this stuff. But no, for the most part, no. Ukraine is now grousing that they are running out of bullets. They're running out of ammunition.
Yeah.
They've had to pull out of Donetsk stronghold, and the Russians have moved back in. And I don't say this with glee. People somehow get into their heads that I'm like, woohoo, Russia's winning. Yay.
No, you were very, very much have been in support of Ukraine in this whole thing.
Right. And I still think that they should hold on to their sovereignty, and as I would any country. But here's the facts on the ground, folks, is that Russia has won the war that Russia probably wanted to fight with to begin with. They didn't want a wholesale invasion. Putin, I'm not sure how he stumbled into it because it was just stupid. But they're going to get what they wanted, which is the Donetsk is either going to have autonomy or it's going to be ceded to Russia. The Crimea is going to stay Russian. The land that Russia has, overrun, they're going to keep. That's the only way you're going to have peace. Now, you could have this be a slog that lasts for years and years and years, which seems to be the American MO. But I happen to agree with people who question the money. Now, Ted, here's a technical question I couldn't find an answer to, and maybe you can. When they say we're going to give Ukraine $90 billion in aid, which is not far, which they have done once, do they give them like, does some American diplomats show up with a big check on phone core, like an oversized lottery
No,
check?
no.
Now, does this come in the guise of bullets? Here's a truckload of missile launchers. Here's some tanks.
So so basically, yes, that's how it works. But basically the way it works is first, there's what they call the appropriation. So Congress appropriates, let's say, I think it's 60 billion that that Congress, the Biden White House is trying to get through Congress for Ukraine that's stalled. So let's just say that passes. Then that's appropriated. And then the funds have to be dispersed. So the money can be dispersed in one of two ways. It can be either wired directly as cash. It's actually, as a parenthetical, fascinating. When the U.S. was allied with the Soviet Union during World War II, the U.S. Fort Knox literally sent bars of gold bullion via ship to the Soviet Union. They transferred them as funding for the Soviet war effort against the Germans. But in this day and age, they would wire the money, or they will also send weapon systems. They'll say, well, we're sending you this HIMARS missile. It's worth this amount. So we subtract that from the 60 billion. And that's kind of like how they do it. So so basically it's a combination of like cash and in kind. Probably most of it in this case would be in kind. It'll come as material, it'll come as weapons and ammunition.
But I'm also suspecting that, given like most of our allies, doing air quotes here, the Zelensky family probably has a bank account in the Caymans.
There's a lot of evidence that Zelensky is extremely corrupt. Some people say he maybe already have become a billionaire as a result of this war.
Well, Fidel Castro, when he died, was one of the richest men on the planet, because all the aid that poured into Cuba poured into the Castro family coffers.
Now, that's not always the case, but that's often the case. Yeah, no question.
Well, guy has to look out for himself. It's sort of like when where presidents of Mexico end up? Connecticut. No corruption there at all. Okay, so going forward with this, I mean, I understand the wanting to support Ukraine. I think that ship has sailed. And neither Ted nor I say that with any glee. It's just the practical side of things. Now it's time to negotiate the peace. I hate to hand Putin another win, what he did to Georgia, what he's done to other countries.
I mean, is it really that bad to end up with this result? And the reason I ask that is because, first of all, I mean, obviously anything that ends the war is good by definition. But I mean, even with this end result, I mean, in a way, aren't we just ending up with borders that make more sense than the ones that existed before the war, where basically everything that lies on the Russia will end up with, there's no land there that is majority ethnic Ukrainian. It's majority Russian, ethnic Russian. These are people who want to be part of Russia, always wanted to be part of Russia. And due to, it didn't matter when they were all together in the USSR, but it's like, imagine, I think a good comparison is, imagine if the US split apart the same exact way that the Soviet Union split apart. And then we end up with 50 different states instead of 15 different former Soviet republics, right? There's going to be some borders that kind of might make some sense. Like Texas kind of makes some sense. But, California doesn't really make sense. Northern and Southern California would probably break apart. They don't really have much in common. I think about like the New York, New Jersey border doesn't make any sense. Really, like North Jersey belongs with New York because culturally it's like New York. even
It
ethnically.
really
It's like New
is.
York. It's like a lot of, blacks, Italians, and Irish, right? I mean, they have similar accents, similar culture. And so, I mean, my point is that, like, in Ukraine, you have like this the far east of Ukraine, which is currently under Russian occupation, is that area is ethnically Russian. It should be in Russia. It should have been in Russia to begin with.
But that was the Russianization under Stalin and Khrushchev, and then Brezhnev.
Sure, but there we are.
No, I know, but you could say the same is true of the Baltic states. They moved a lot of ethnic Russians in Lithuania. I'm Lithuanian. My name is Lithuanian. So I have a dog in this fight. I believe Vilnius, the capital, is the ethnic Russian population was somewhere in the neighborhood of 25%. That's an old number. I'm not sure it's still
I'm sure it's
that high,
down now.
but it's still significant. And someone, beats up a Russian national, and Putin's going to go, must go in and take care to protect the Russian brother. That was the whole gist on all the other invasions he's had over the last decade. That's where the fear is. And so in terms of the border of Ukraine, you and I both know history pretty well. Ukraine does not have the border of Ukraine is about as malleable and fungible as I'm trying to think of I'm treading water trying to think of something clever here.
Gumby?
No, it's not. No, it's not even that firm. It's like fog. I mean, it contracts, it expands, but it's never quite,
Well, there's no natural barriers really.
No, but you could say, but those were the nationally recognized borders of Ukraine, and for Putin to move in militarily, I will always oppose that.
But I mean, Putin's not really wrong when he says that. Look, there's a distinct Ukrainian culture for sure, but in that part he's wrong about that. But he's right when he sort of says, like, come on, it's a vassal state of Russia. It always has been, and he's right about that. That's sort of
but
like
not
Canada.
really.
It's Canada. Canada's not. They don't get to be sassy. It's a vassal state of the United States. They even make their coins that look the same as ours.
As my children call it, Canada, America's hat.
I mean, sorry, Canadians, you don't really have a distinct culture. You're like we just haven't gotten around to invading you. And keep it that way.
I think we have to watch them because, quite frankly, Ted, they've been too goddamn quiet up there.
They're being quiet so that we don't notice. And that's what if the Ukrainians had any brains, well, they did until 2014. And frankly, they were pushed into it by the CIA and the neo-Nazis to have this coup in 2014. But now it's like, I mean, come on, it's like no superpower would tolerate sassiness on their border. Like, if Mongolia gets sassy, China's gonna take it. Like, don't get sassy. Who do you think you are? Fuck off.
Because did you know that only 6% of the Chinese population lives in the western part of the country? I think that's amazing to me.
Oh yeah, no, if you go there, you see that. Like, basically nobody lives out there. It's all desert.
Well, I lived in Arizona. I liked it there.
Well, not that many people live in Arizona.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
what?
In Arizona,
Phoenix is the fifth biggest city in the country.
Yeah, but that's insane. It's part of the reason that the Colorado River is drying up.
Yeah, no kidding. I walked the Grand Canyon rim to rim a year or two ago, and it is very low when you cross the Colorado. Anyway, so President Rall, you're at your press conference. Scott Stantis, Chicago Tribune. Would you support the aid package currently going through the Congress for Ukraine or not?
No, because we're not going to, in this country, we don't throw good money after bad. It's already pretty obvious that there's no world in which Ukraine is going to prevail in this. Furthermore, it's time to, use this time to find out if the Russians are amenable to a peace accord. We can withdraw, just keep the lines frozen where they are now, as long as what remains of Ukraine is guaranteed and its territorial integrity is guaranteed by Russia, we will be fine with it. Let it lie.
Well, yeah. See, I would say this. I would peg the aid to negotiating with for
That's
peace,
a good
suing for
idea.
peace.
You could say like, okay, well, yeah, you can have the 60 billion, but you're going to have to sit down for negotiations. This will buy you the breathing space to do that. But you have to be
Yeah,
serious about the negotiations.
right. And that therein lies the rub. So, but I do believe that there is, I'm sorry, I have no idea what that's about. Don't you love getting messages like you must take care of this right now? And I'm like, no, I don't have to. Don't want to. I'm doing a podcast. Leave me the fuck alone.
Fuck off.
So yeah, and if I was Russia, I would be, if they get to serious negotiations, then they can be somewhat contrite. They can say, okay, we'll give you back Zoompa Loompa or some other little town. They can
Yeah, I
make
mean,
some
there's a
concessions.
little bit of territory that Russia could give up. But I
Well,
mean,
Russia,
honestly, what should Russia really give up? I mean,
they don't
won.
have to.
They
Yeah,
won.
they won. He won. And I again, I don't like that, but that's where we are. That's where you can't deny it. That's where we are. And
And I
anyone
would end
who's,
and I would end the sanctions also.
well, and I would put that, definitely have that on the table when I'm negotiating this piece, that Russia could have some form of Marshall Plan to help rebuild the parts of Ukraine that have
Maybe
been
that would be the
significantly
trade-off.
damaged.
Maybe that'd be the trade-off. Like will bring you back into the European economy. So you'll have increased trade and revenue, more energy sales, and that will allow you the money that you can use for the time being to help Ukrainians rebuild. That seems fair.
Okay. Well,
Although the Ukrainians won't use the money to rebuild, they'll just give it to Zelensky in his numbered account. But whatever.
well,
But that's their business. I would also make it contingent on Ukraine should have to have elections again, suspend martial law, and go back to being a democracy.
well, I'd like that because it puts the lie to we're defending democracy, because you can't defend a democracy that's not having, democracy.
It's hard to justify that. So
It is very hard to justify it.
so here we go. Let's leave that there.
Okay.
Scott, where can people find your other stuff besides the DMZ America podcast?
You can go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis to see my editorial cartoons. You can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City and see my political comic strip. You can go to chicagotribune.com/opinion and see a gallery of the work I do for them. You can go to dallasnews.com and see the work I do for the Dallas Morning News. And you can hear my mellifluous. Thank you. That mellifluous voice there on Center Clip. It is a wonderful app. Little podcast, 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes on the given issues of the day. I really love it because when there is a breaking news story, it's where I can get the word out the quickest, and they're a great conduit for that. Ted, where can we see all things Teddian?
You can go to, among other places, whowhatwhy.org. I actually have a humdinger of a cartoon coming out there tomorrow. And then just as a teaser, it's called Electoral Dysfunction. Yeah, see what I did there? Anyway, so also going to, you can find my work at Sputnik.com, also gocomics.com/Ted Rall and Rall.com, and of course the show, which you can find on X Spaces or Rumble or Sputnik News, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time, the final countdown with me and Angie Wong.
And thanks. I know I've said this before, and I don't, but it bears repeating. It is an excellent show. I listen to it as often as I can, often when I get up early-ish, and I turn it on in my studio, and that's what's fun, because you guys are terrific. And then you talk about issues, and you have guests that nobody else has.
Thank you, Scott.
No, it's worth
Much
listening
appreciated.
to. Do it.
All right.
You want to.
With that, we'll leave that there. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you again next week. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.